Welcome to another episode of Just One More Fix. This is James. With me in this episode is Lacey.
Hey.
You can find us online at justonemorefix.com or on Twitter at justonemorefix. If you like us, you can support us at Patreon, and you can give us a rating and review at iTunes or wherever you find us at. In this episode, we're going to have a Gaming Roundtable number 11. And now, it's time to get our gaming fix.
I'm Willie D. Nelson from All Things Good and Nerdy, a pop culture podcast, part of the Gonna Geek Network. Just like the show you're checking out now. Shows on the network are individually owned, and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other tantalizingly geeky shows at GonnaGeekNetwork.com.
Welcome to Just One More Fix again. Today we are going to have a gaming roundtable again because we haven't had one since August, actually, it looks like. So we kind of look back at our list of episodes that we had rolled through and looked like we hadn't done one in quite a while. So we are going to celebrate the new year with a gaming roundtable. So we had some topics that we kind of talked about that didn't really seem like they would kind of build into a complete episode. So we kind of might bring some of those in here, as well as just sort of what we've been doing in game and just see where things go from there. So the first one, I'm just going to get this out of the way, is I had this interesting thought where I was contemplating the world deeply and solving all of the world's problems, as I often do. And I realized sort of like the comparison between running games, specifically role-playing games, and a dance. So when you're dancing, like, cause I think it was like some ballroom dancing or something that was popped up in my feed somewhere or whatever, right? Which I don't know why, but whatever, exactly. But it occurred to me that just because of the collision of the two things that happening at once.
Watching Cuddle.
I guess. But like, you know, when you're running a game, someone is sort of leading the dance and, you know, everyone else is playing. And in the same way, if you don't have a good partner, then it just goes to crap, right?
True.
So I didn't know if there was a whole lot to explore there, but it was just an interesting, I don't know, thought, I guess. Do you know what I'm saying? Because I think in a lot of ways, we think about running games as this, not necessarily as a give and take or as like, I'm going to follow the game masters. And sometimes you do, and it kind of changes as things go by. But just sort of how there's this, I don't know, back and forth, and how having a good dance partner can really make things look, you know, that's what really makes
having needs well appear effortless,
right?
Which is kind of the same thing for like GMing,
right? So I don't know. I don't think there's a whole lot there, but it was just an interesting thought, and like, not that I'm some kind of I know very little about dancing.
I feel like
obviously.
You have the same problem at the table when you have someone who's used to GMing all the time and never playing, as if you put like two leads together on the dance floor.
Oh yeah, that's a really good analogy.
I mean, yeah, not to take it too far, but that's just the next thing I thought of. Like,
no, but that's another great comparison, though. I think you're exactly right with that, because it is like like sort of like right on the nose. Do you know what I mean? Like, you know, sometimes you just got to take a step back and you know, go with the flow. Do you know you know what I mean? I didn't even think of it that way. That's a really good analogy. That's a really good way to tie into that, like stepping out of the limelight too. Do you know what I mean? That's interesting. So I don't know if there's a whole lot else to say there. It's just this weird thought that I had as I was driving or listening or whatever it was I was doing at the exact moment. I don't exactly remember, but yeah. Which one?
You know, where he goes into the soda shop or whatever, and it's Nev Campbell.
Nev Campbell.
Yeah. Well, I think it's funny because he's obviously the lead in that because he's a man and he's leading because that's what happens. And when you watch the extras in the film, he doesn't really know how to dance at all. He's like, I basically just stood there and let her dance around me because she's had dancing lessons since she was like a child. Yeah. But the whole thing looks like so well put together. So I don't know.
That's sort of what it's like if you have really good players and you're the GM. You can just kind of like, so what do you do?
I stood here and then I put my hand out here and then I put my hand out there. Yeah. And they did amazing things and made me look really good.
Right on. For any of you wondering, we're talking about Reefer Madness, which was a musical from Showtime quite some time ago that is absolutely hilarious, and it's a good fun time.
What's the the original propaganda film "Tell Your Children"? I believe it was called.
Yeah,
and it was a real thing that got made that was utterly ridiculous about how marijuana makes your children go crazy and basically like murder people and all kinds of nonsense. And so this is a satirical piece about that.
It's a lot of fun. It's great, and it's
There
musical.
is a lot of blasphemy and a lot of poking fun at the establishment and anti-drug persons.
Right.
So if you're not down for any of that, don't watch it. But if you think that sounds like a roaring good time,
it's awesome.
Hilarious.
Right on.
Plus, it's got the guy that does the laugh for
the Crypt Keeper.
The Crypt Keeper from Tales from the Crypt. If you'd love to remember that show.
Yeah,
Amazing. See, they're remaking all these things. Why is that not something that's been remade yet?
Well, it's not that old,
That guy's probably still alive, too. I mean, he can do the...
But it's not that old. That came out in the mid-2000s.
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
No, Tales from the Crypt is definitely older than that.
No, I'm talking about the Reefer Madness.
Oh, no. I'm talking about Tales from the Crypt. Why haven't they remade that yet?
I don't know. I have no idea.
That skeleton.
Mm-hmm.
It's just it reminds me of the one from Indiana Jones, right? He drinks the water from the wrong grail.
He chose poorly. Yeah.
It was 1980s graphic. Amazing.
Well, it worked part of it because it was actual effects too. That's why it was fun.
It's like a wax thing that they melt.
They heat up and melt down. Yeah.
Well, it looks terrible now, but
I don't think
as a kid, I thought it was terrifying.
Well, yeah, but I think it still looks pretty good.
It's kind of like the fake CGI lightning going on too. Really doesn't like.
Well, that's the Ark one. That's Raiders of the Lost Ark, where that one.
I think there's some of that in the.
Yeah, maybe. But either way, I don't care. I'm still a bigger fan of practical effects versus CGI. So
it just doesn't age.
Oh, I don't know. Some of them do. I think it depends on how good the effects are.
Well, those animatronics definitely age better than the...
No, but like if you look at good makeup and good prosthetics and that kind of stuff, those always age better.
Yeah,
or, I mean, like if they're done well. Yeah.
CGI. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I'm sorry, I thought you said that they looked bad.
No, like the computer generated stuff.
Oh, the old ones.
Although I guess we'll see now because so much of it really does look pretty lifelike, but...
Yeah, but it's almost too lifelike sometimes. I don't know. We're a little off in left field right now, but it's all good. All right, so...
Went off on a big tangent. You're welcome.
It's all good.
Speaking of Nazis... bringing it around.
Okay.
Holy Grail, Indiana Jones, always Nazis, and Secret Hitler. We've been playing a lot of that lately.
That's a good game.
I was so annoyed with One Night Ultimate Werewolf because our kids have chosen that as their favorite game of all time until we got Secret Hitler as a gift.
Right.
And it's just better.
So Secret Hitler is a social deduction game where there are two teams and no one knows each other's role, essentially, right? And there's a team, one team is liberals and one team is fascists. And ideally this is taking place in pre-World War II Germany. And one of the fascists is Hitler. And he is no one. The fascists know who the fascists are, and depending on how many players there are, the fascists know who Hitler is, but Hitler may not know who the fascists are, right? And the liberals win by enacting 5 or 6 liberal policies.
5 liberal policies.
And then the fascists win by either enacting 6 fascist policies or having 3 fascist policies and having Hitler elected chancellor. So it has an election mechanic and it's a social deduction game.
So it's similar to One Night Ultimate Werewolf.
Right.
Well, I mean, like you said, it's a social deduction game. So there's lots of bluffing and throwing shade and all of that stuff.
But I feel like one of the differences is that in One Night Ultimate Werewolf, it's just a bluffing game. You don't really have a whole lot to actually go off of, right? You're just making arguments one way or the other, and then we'll see what happens.
Separate mechanic where you're like playing to accomplish things as a team as opposed to just being more every man for himself.
And then counting votes and trying to decide how people are voting or when they draw policies. So if you have a government elected, the president draws 3 policies, discards 1, and gives them to the chancellor. The chancellor discards 1 and puts 1 in play. And so there's some bluffing there about what did you draw, what were you given, and that kind of stuff.
There's a little bit of strategy too, as far as trying to hide your identity. You're trying to draw someone else's out. Yeah, so it's all around a better game.
Yeah, it's sort of like but like it's one of those things where you couldn't have this game without having One Night Ultimate Werewolf first, but this game is way, way, way superior.
I also don't think you can play it with that.
True. Well, the max is supposed to be 10, and I think it is. I would be curious because we've done 8. We haven't done 9 or 10 yet. And at 8 people, and we've also done 5, which is the least you're supposed to play with. And it's been fun. All those things in between. I haven't done 9 or 10, so we don't really know. how that would change things.
I think that might actually be a sweet spot, because I feel like when you have a smaller number of people, it seems like, figuring out one person is the difference.
Yeah, winning and losing
the game.
Could be. Yeah, I agree with that.
I think just adding more people makes it trickier.
Right. Now, the one thing I thought that was a little funny about the game was on the box it says 17 plus as far as an age group.
I think that's just because it has fascists and Hitler. Like, if I had to guess, that is the only reason. Right. It's not because mechanically it's difficult. It's because concept-wise, it's a, as Kurt was saying, when a girl underground, a sticky wicket. True.
But I don't know. I think it's one of those things where it could be used as a really interesting teaching tool to explain how that kind of stuff happens in secrecy and whatnot.
Well, I agree, but I think, as it exists now in this universe, we shelter our children from things that ought to be talked about rather than swept under the rug, because I thought that just creates more lurking danger.
True. So, I think one night is 9 or 10 plus, I think is what it's listed as, maybe even 8. But I could see this one being 14 would be more reasonable to me. You know what I'm saying? To where you could understand things a little bit deeper. You've learned some social studies and some history.
Well, I mean, I see that, but I honestly think the biggest barrier to me is when you have younger people like that play. They're just usually not that good at lying. Like, adults are just infinitely better at lying than children are.
Fair enough. So Isaiah does pretty good at it, but he's been. I think it's not a fair comparison because he's been playing board games and bluffing games a long, long time. Mm-hmm. So his experience is not the average 14-year-old playing games experience. So we take that with a little bit of a grain of salt. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun. I at first when I saw it, I was like, I have to see how this goes. And then I was really, I had high hopes, but I was pleasantly
love the
surprised.
style of it too.
Yeah, the box looks great.
The way the art is done, and
lots of fun.
And the fascists are all Liz, which is fun.
Mm-hmm. So the episode that drops before this is going to be where we reimagine the fighter, and hopefully all of you have really enjoyed that, because that was one of the most fun episodes that I've had recording in a little while. One, because it was sort of self-serving for our table, but also two, I just think that class is really boring, and I'm really looking forward to getting that to our table and taking it for a spin with Hot Springs Island, because I think with you and Carrie, as characters leaving and new ones coming back, and
I'm pretty sure I'm going to make a fighter this time.
I kind of thought you would.
I just want to go like a hard right away from what I was doing before.
Right. So I hope that we get some interesting use out of it and see what happens with it. And
because I want to throw a wrench into kind of Simon and Alan have going on, which worked well with me and Carrie's sort of not automatically hostile thing.
Oh, right.
We join up with Team Kurt, who is a fighter, and I'll like stab it and take the gold. And I just want to see what happens when we try and just derail every
right on
the status quo.
So I'm really excited about it. And it's weird to me because I've been playing games for a long time.
Plus, I'm sad none of us have died on Hot Springs Island.
True.
Sorry to interject in the middle of your sentence.
You're good.
I had a thought that popped up.
At the same time, I agree with what you're saying, because I thought we would have had some death at this point as well. But I really think that you all have done a very good job of identifying dangers and sort of steering clear of them where you could, and picking the right fights to be involved in and not be involved in.
Well, I agree. And we definitely could have died lots of times.
Yeah. And also, I think that the change of how the tables work for what is actually happening in the scene before you get there has changed the way those encounters go, because a lot of them are not designed out the gate to be hostile. So depending on what the dice come up on the rolls or whatever. So it's been a lot of fun.
I was just thinking like those swarm Viterax, they definitely could have killed us, killed us so hard.
I was surprised. I thought somebody was going to go wrong with that, but it just didn't sort of pan out that way.
I used my clever when the fact that I had collected weird things.
True. Although it's going to be interesting because now you won't have your two scientist collector people there to sort of bail everyone out.
Yeah, we're so good. We're going to die so hard.
Yeah.
Or Simon's going to use a terrible spell, and then there will be a terrible spell, and we'll die. We'll die from his spell probably.
So. But what I was saying before was that it's just weird to me to be excited to get a game to the table to see what happens with the fighter. Do you know what I mean? You know?
True,
so
yeah.
I don't know.
It's not really like, ooh, these interesting spells. And that was like the biggest thing to come when we got the Eldritch Cock and the Vaginas Are Magic book. So that kind of reimagined that class. And then you did the Alchemist one, and I was like, obviously I have to play this because that's exciting.
Right.
And now I'm like, ooh, fighter.
So this might lead into something, another future episode. But so I was having this thought about that game, and I also kind of thought maybe there should be a little bit more reimagining on the special, a little bit, not a ton, but just a little bit to sort of make it a little more than just dots on skills, because that was my argument about fighter is the fighter is just +1 attack bonus, whereas fundamentally that's really what's happening with the specialist too.
Oh, well, all we really did with the fighter was change dots on paper too.
I agree. But
like when I pick my dots, like I try and imagine the character that has those kind of dots. Like
No, I agree. So I thought maybe it might just involve something where for each skill, when you get to 5th or 10th level, you choose a skill to be specialized in, but instead of just saying you get to redistribute these points, it gives you some kind of special bonus or something, some ability or whatever. You know?
I kind of like the idea of not allowing a jack of all trades thing. Like you have this many skill points, but you can only pick 2 things to spend them in, or be defining like a primary skill that you get like double points in, or some sort of such thing.
So I don't know what it will look like, but I think that'll be an episode something for the future to reimagine the specialist a little bit. I don't think it needs a huge amount of work, but I think a little bit, some small tweaks could be really interesting. I'm going to write that down real quick. And then with that, I think the miracle worker was me reimagining the cleric, but I think I'm not sure it really works quite right yet. So I don't know. That may be a thing that we may look into as well. So just
we did a healthy amount of talking about the cleric when we did our magic episode.
That's true.
Because I talked about all of annoyances with the fact that the cleric just gets to do whatever he wants with no consequences that come with religion. Like, you're not praying. Where's that happening in the game? You're not like demanding a miracle from God and him being like, we'll see. And then you being like, oh, well, it's all in your plan.
Well, that's something on me too, because in that game, we have a miracle worker, and I haven't done the best job of sort of reinforcing what makes the miracle worker the miracle worker. But I think maybe
kind of a questioning happening, which I think is really
it's interesting. I agree. So right on. So that's my first thing was just the fighter thing has me excited about fighters, which is just strange to me. Yeah, I don't know. So.
Is there multi-clean in LOT?
No, I don't.
Because there's not, but I feel like it's a natural progression for what's going on with his character. Because he's a cleric, but he's questioning and he's following this wizard around. So like, can you get like a wizard apprentice?
So I don't know how we would handle that. I think it would be just maybe.
I think you should let it happen if it happens.
Well, yeah. I don't think it would be multi-classing though, because you would cease to be a miracle worker at that point. So you would just lose those levels and then maybe across to magic user. I don't know.
Your spells come from God and you get rid of the God.
You're kind of like
probably don't have those spells anymore.
Poo-poo on you. No more awesomeness, right? So
true.
I don't know. I don't know what that'll look like, but we'll have to figure it out. So right on.
Else that's like vaguely a few related to talk about. Because I have a pretty hard shift after that.
Okay, so I guess I do. Most recently, I've been working on the Hastings Party thing, specifically the map, and I've got it laid in there, but I want some critique on the map. So it's basically ready to go to the printer and be officially released and everything else, but I want to get some critique on how the map inking has came out and how it's done. So it's sort of like I did it, so it's my first isometric map that I've ever done. Now I did some drafting and stuff like that actually by hand back in the day when I was going to school for engineering and stuff. So it doesn't look bad, but it's just I'm not sure it looks as good as I would like it to be in sort of like an adventure or a zine. So I don't know. So that's the only other thing that I have. It's basically done and ready to go. I keep meaning to ask several people that come to our table to be like, hey, look at this, because I have it printed and ready to go. But like a dummy, I get sidetracked.
Set it into the table.
In the table, that's what I should probably do.
So that it's laying out whenever he comes over.
I will do that when we get done with this. It's actually my clipboard for work.
Solving problems right here.
Exactly. Right on. So that's the only thing I have for that. Stoked and just, tooling away at it or whatever and ready to move on to the next thing, because it's basically been done for a while. So
I'm gonna kind of stick in the things that are currently going on at our table of things.
Okay.
So Kurt has been coming over a little more again. Yay. And he's been running some Delta Green. Mm-hmm. And I love Delta Green. I think I just really love government conspiracy games because I like Orpheus, I like Connex, I like Delta Green. There's a heavy trend happening here.
Right.
But he's been running, I'm forgetting, but like the name of the medically type one that he's...
Sick Again?
Yes, Sick Again for Delta Green. So we've done a couple of the scenarios for that now. And the last one I was just I thought I was going to die.
Which one was that?
There was like the desert. I don't want to like ruin it if somebody's planning on running it for their players, but we were part of a operation in the Middle East. We were sent into a desert valley to investigate something.
Yeah.
And so, as Delta Green goes, something went terribly wrong.
We on the off chance, not even off chance, on the chance that people that listen to this obviously like Delta Green and Call of Cthulhu, I'm not going to do any spoiling of it, right? So because the parameters of it is that it happens in the Middle East, sort of like surrounding the Iraq War, which no spoilers, that's the premise of the adventure, right? The only criticism that I have of it, and I don't know if it's that I've just played so much Call of Cthulhu, because we talked about this at the table afterwards, that it seemed like when we got in there and you start going through the things and you find it's Call of Cthulhu, surprise, surprise, guess what there's going to be, and I say that not as I like it. Do you know what I mean? So I don't say that as like, oh, what a crappy thing. Do you know?
See, I like it. And I don't know for what I should have expected it to come from the place that it did come from, but I was expecting it to come from somewhere else. Just because of the kind of terrain that it's set in and, that kind of thing.
My only criticism is it just felt predictable to me, but I don't know if that's 100% fair criticism because, like I said, way, way deep in Call of Cthulhu and the mythos and all that kind of stuff. So sometimes I'm like, maybe it's just because I've read and seen too much. You know what I mean? So, but I say that
doesn't protect you from the sanity loss.
See, exactly. So I say all of that, and I still had a good time with it. But my only criticism was I kind of saw it coming, and
So that was one adventure. We also did the space one.
Yeah.
Did you feel the same way about that, or
not so much? But I
found that one frankly terrifying. I'm gonna be honest.
Of the two, and both. Okay, so I say this: both of them were good. I had fun in both games, right? So I'm not, this isn't a shot at the games or how they're designed or how Kurt ran them or anything. I had fun in both of them. If I had to pick one that I had more fun in, it would be the space one. But I think that might be because one, I didn't find it as predictable, right? Two, I think Cthulhu in space is sort of like this untapped genre right now. So when you think of Cthulhu, you think...
nothing really tells you like something is beyond space and time.
Like being
its
in space.
Ability to be in space.
Right. Yeah. No, I agree with that. But I think I really enjoy that 2001 kind of creepiness.
That dark sci-fi.
Yeah. And but plausibly dark, right? And I also enjoy Alien, where it's that dark and completely helpless terror because of these bad things, right?
And it's so far unknown. It's alien, if you will, completely beyond your understanding and imagining.
Right.
So if you have no concept of that actual realm of existence, then suddenly anything is possible, including all of the bad things.
Right.
So it feels more plausible because it is less understood.
Right.
Like less understandable, if that makes sense.
I think also maybe it's part of the resurgence, not even resurgence, there's lots of sci-fi games that are in that Alien vein that have come out now. So Alien has its actual own RPG, and then Mothership and the success of The Expanse, and it has an RPG now. And there's lots of other sort of media that are in that vein. And I think that maybe it might also partially be because I really enjoy The Expanse and I enjoy Mothership. And so that's part of why I enjoyed it more, But I don't know 100% one way or the other. But both of them were good. I had a great time in both.
The only thing I don't fully understand yet is how the two tie together. I have no inkling of where in general the storyline is going other than some kind of weird sanity infiltration.
Right.
But I don't know.
I don't know.
Which I guess is good. If I had it figured out by episode 2, probably the writers didn't do their job very well.
Well, I actually had forgotten that they all kind of tie together.
Yeah,
so maybe if I looked at my notes, I might be able to...
And they seem very different.
Yeah. I think if I looked at my notes, I might be able to draw some parallels and sort of piece together some parts of it. But I think maybe the third one I might enjoy even more because trying to figure out how all of these now come together into one thing. So I don't know. I'll have to see. I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be a good time. I like the
idea, of a bigger puzzle within the puzzle kind of thing. Like when you're watching a series, right? And you're like, each episode is an investigation, but then there's the overarching investigation that you're continue to watch to find out what's going to happen.
Right. So the next one that he's going to run is Sick Again, and I'm kind of curious to see how that one goes because I'm excited to play it, but it's a medical scenario, and Kurt has talked about...
Which is why it's taken so long, because he's nervous about running it for us because we have medical background. Which,
I understand.
I say that that's silly to me, but I've had the same fears about running historical fiction for you guys at the table because I am as ignorant at history as like the average person is about as Kurt is probably about medical stuff.
So I don't know if I have those same fears about things, because it's firmly part in my brain about when I run a game, we're here to have a good time, and we've all sort of acknowledged the fact that we're going to put on the disbelief goggles and say, hey, do you know?
Well, and I acknowledge that as my experience at the table, but at the same time, when used to going through like your day-to-day life being competent at understanding something, being incompetent, and then taking that and being like, I am now the expert at the table in this realm of incompetency.
I agree. I understand that. I understand why. I just sort of, I don't know. It's one of those things where I feel like if you've done just a little bit of looking at whatever your adventure is centered around, you should be fine, because we're all,
And I always do.
Yeah.
But then I'm afraid I'm going to say something dumb like, oh, so you guys print out these pamphlets, and then you're going to be like, the printing press isn't invented for another 20 years. And then I'm like, oh, well,
whatever.
You handwrite them.
It's all good.
You stay up all night.
So, do you have anything else about that one, or?
No, I agree.
I think it should be a good time. It'll be fun. I had forgotten about that. I'm excited. I would like to. I guess I do have one other small criticism about those ones, and it's for our table actually, is that those scenarios are written up with a lot of characters, which I think is cool.
Oh yeah.
And I would have liked to have been able to play them with four, 5, or 6 people at the table.
Yeah, I agree.
I think if you had every role filled, that's actually too much, right? But I think that 5 or 6, I think, is a sweet spot for those kind of.
We had 3.
It was still good. It still went
wasn't
well,
bad.
But I think
it would be more full if you had.
So that's why when we were going to play the other day, and I was like, I want to play this game, but I really don't want to play this game because, there was only a couple of it. I think there's 3 of us. And I was like, I would just rather wait until we have the right, amount of people, and then we do it and kick it off right.
Yeah. And I guess that was my thing with playing Sick again the other night because I was, I really want to play it, but I would really like to play it with at least 3 people. But more is always better.
Right. Right on. So I started a Degenisis game recently, and I don't know that we'll develop this into an actual topic or not, because we've talked a lot about World of Darkness and how we structure our games. But what?
Nothing. I'm just thinking I'm thinking of that game as terrifying too, which I feel like has been the theme for me. But being infested by something is a hot button issue for me. Like that's the thing that freaks me out. And whether it's, some kind of weird creature in Delta Green that causes insanity or mushroom
at
spores.
work in the whole bit, like all of it, no matter what people have, doesn't bother too much. But like parasites?
Yeah.
Oh no. Nope.
I don't want to be infested with anything.
No, I agree. It's one of those just awful moments. But so in starting Degenisis again, I decided to approach the game differently and treat each of the cults as if in the same way that I treat clans from Vampire. So there are all these competing loyalties and internal politics happening, and then loyalties between the clans and different members of the clans. And so it's been a lot of fun, and we're 2 games in now, I think, and I have a really solid foundation of different loyalties and different plots pulling characters in different directions, and actually, in some cases, directly against each other, depending on how things get turned out. So
it's a struggle.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's
I really thought I probably should have just martyred myself. That would have been an appropriate thing to do. I should have done it. It's what my religion demanded.
Right. So you're an Anabaptist, which are terrifying, but.
Yeah. And then I thought, well, maybe, I can learn more information this way and then end up murdering more things, ultimately culminating in my murder.
Well, I also think that knowing about the Amsumos firsthand, knowing that has to be dealt with, otherwise it could present a larger problem, kind of has to change your view on things a little bit too.
I don't know that my view's been changed at all.
Well, in that you have to, that's a potentially a larger problem that has to be dealt with.
It seems very much like a problem for the Brainiac
chroniclers.
Chroniclers than it does for me. I mean, that seems like a chronicler.
I agree, but if they are
computer
incapable
guy,
of dealing
robot
with
guy,
it,
murdering chroniclers, I mean, I don't really see a big problem here.
But what happens when the chroniclers run out?
I don't know. I don't know what the answer to that is.
And then
I guess we just let the robot take care of them all, and then we kill the robots when they're done.
See? So I'm just saying.
Well, in the meantime, there's spore infestation to worry about. That's that's numero uno.
So let me ask you this. We've played what I would say is a fair amount of Degenisis, but not a ton, right? Does this game feel different than the other ones? In terms of like theme and tone and politics and stuff like that?
Yes. Yeah, because just some of it was me going back and reading too, but the fact that we're going to a site in the world that was previously owned by the chroniclers and is now owned by the Anabaptists, and like there's one of each of us in our group that kind of there's this tension there. So yeah, I don't think that there was that before. It was more like all of us united against the mushroom people, which is how my character would prefer it. Like that would be the appropriate way for things to be. I don't understand why everybody's so upset about us reclaiming the church that was ours to begin with. That's secondary to the larger problem of our world being taken over. Anyway, yes.
So it was one of those things where the first 2 sessions I sort of set things up with the chronicler and the scrapper and sort of had some focus there with some smattering of Spitalian and some corruption and conspiracy happening there. And then now with you guys shifting towards Cathedral City, the spotlight is going to kind of shift to Anabaptists. Obviously, I don't know if you kind of saw that coming or not. And then there will obviously be some kind of internal struggle or strife to happen within that group that will draw you in, and along with you, your scrapper and chronicler friend, however you want to put quotes around that. I don't know. But I think it will.
I don't think we're friends right now.
No, I don't think so either. But I don't think that you're enemies either.
Solidly coworkers, but
right. So good. Well, I was hoping it would feel different because I was really trying to.
There's definitely more intergroup dissent than there was the first time, for sure.
Because I just didn't want it to turn into, for lack of a better word, a D&D adventure crawl where Anabaptist is your class and we're going to romp through the spore fields and kill ferromancers and whatever, you know?
That is probably.
Yeah.
Although I enjoy it.
No, I agree. Well, I think that's what's cool about that game is that I think that
I'm also playing the barbarian.
Yeah,
so.
But I think you can put one foot in both games. And so we're going to have this internal struggle in politics, and then there'll be some uniting event. We have to go conquer this thing and do whatever. And then now we're back to the city again.
Yeah, the added 10 is interesting.
And it makes the battles and the decisions for who you're... So... a battle is happening and you have the choice of 2 different sort of combat zones to go to for where you help. So depending on who is in those and the current political situation between you two may change, maybe it would be better if the chronicler just happened to die in this battle. I'll go over here and fight these other people, right? And I like the idea of trying to see those moments come out at the table and see what happens. So I'm looking forward to where that game develops and goes. It's been fun. Right on. Do you have anything? Go ahead. Go for it.
So I ran some of the smaller Powered by Apocalypse World games. So one is a ashcan game, and the other is a zine that we backed last year during Zine Quest.
Correct.
And happens to be on my list of goals for this year too. So it's January and I'm knocking them out because if I don't accomplish them by April, you know how it goes. Right. Anyhow. So I had mentioned when we talked about our goals podcast that I had ran the ward for you guys. And I really had a good time doing that. And I felt pretty good because it was requested to run again pretty much right out the gate, which is always a good ego boost.
No, I agree.
When you run a game and somebody's like, hey, we should do that again. And so it was pretty easy. I had read in the back about the Kickstarter thing, which I mentioned I should have looked to see if it was actually fleshed out into a bigger game or if that was something that was
I haven't seen anything about
currently.
It yet, so I don't know.
I haven't either. I would really like to. I think it would be really interesting to have some more playbooks to work with. Yeah. But there is a lot there for an ongoing game as far as social connections and all those little fiddly bits that happen outside of the dramatic medical part, which is it's pretty much what I focused on in this because it's a one shot.
Right.
So there was some interdepartmental romance here and there. Right. And I did try and kind of push things in that direction, but you can only do so much in a few hours.
Right.
So.
Oh yeah, I agree.
But overall, I had a really good time running it, and I thought we created something that felt pretty close anyway. I struggled, though, as a game master in being able to add things quickly enough for it to mirror the kind of hectic. I think it would be better maybe if I had some like quick draw, basically patients written up, like 27-year-old female abdominal pain, 15-year-old male head injury, and just like a stack of index card patients that I could lay out. And maybe if I set like a timer and just every so often put one here, but I was trying to catch that sort of ebb and flow nature as well.
I think it bears mentioning our game was in an emergency room. So
right. I mean, because that's what I'm familiar with. So I thought that would be the easiest to sort of replicate on the fly. It's also the messiest. Maybe then I also think it would be really, really fun to adapt for a EMS kind of game. And I'd mentioned that to you.
Yeah.
I think that would be really fun. And I think of that movie that we watched with Nicolas Cage.
Bring Out Your Dead.
Bring Out Your Dead. Yeah. I really think that would be amazing.
That movie, Bring Out Your Dead, is a movie with Nicolas Cage.
It did not get very good reviews.
No.
To put up front.
But
it is
of all the movies that have EMS in them, it is about as close as you can get for what I've seen for a depiction. And
now I will say, so when you say that, you're going to go and watch this and you're going to be like, people don't actually act. And people don't act that bad. It's true. But those are the thoughts that go through your head. And those are like the feelings that you, come on.
So
most of the time
you're right. However,
you're holding it together. It's not like that all the time.
No, if you've been on the job for a while, everybody knows someone who's at that point, though. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, you're so burned out and you have, I mean, honestly, a fair degree of PTSD.
And then I think it's also a good reflection of how, depending on what stage of your career you're in, those moments come and go. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you're burnt and sometimes, hey, you turn it back around and whatever. But I do agree. It's of all the EMS movies that exist or that portray EMS, it's the one that does it relatively well. And apparently Nicolas Cage actually rode with crews in New York City before doing that to kind of get an idea for how things go or whatever.
But the sleep deprivation, the crappy food, the things that he say may not always leave the mouth of somebody who's taking care of people, but they definitely go through their head at least once or twice. Like, if we're lucky, we have a filter, but we're all only human after all. So it is a hard job.
No, I agree. So when it comes to the ward, I was unsure about it, and I still am not sure that I have made up my mind one way or the other on it. I had a good time playing that game, but it's one of those things where, and I don't understand why, because I tried to figure out what it was, because I really enjoy MASH'd. That game was a lot of fun to me, and I really like the contrast between the OR scenes and the camp scenes and whatever. But for whatever reason, the ward just felt a little bit different to me. But I think that may be partially because the selection of playbooks is kind of limited. Now, it's an ashcan game, so it's not an actual fair criticism yet, because it's not a complete game. But I felt like you're either nurse or physician, and there's a whole lot more in the ER than just that. And it really sets up that power dynamic in a kind of a funny way, because the reality is in the emergency room and in any hospital, there are way fewer doctors than there are other staff, right? Mm-hmm. And so I feel like it would maybe flow better if you knew out the gate less physicians and more of the other staff, right? And you can still have that power dynamic, because I think that's an important part to capture as well. But I think that it could be, I
agree and I disagree, because the most interesting power dynamic moves that happen are between physicians.
No, I agree.
And they're terrible at the time. You don't want to be involved. You don't want to be anywhere near it. But looking back, you're like, oh my God. Yeah. If you're going to replicate that in the game, that is where the muck is. I got caught in the middle one time. I would like that to never happen again.
Right on. So I had a good time. I look forward to it. I guess I'm just trying to figure out the mindset that I need to get in for that game specifically, and I don't know what it is yet. But I had actually had a similar thought about an EMS game where it would work similar to Night Witches with a call phase and a station phase or something like that, because that life is really kind of weird and bizarre, and there's it's just strange that people exist that way. I think
it would be good. We should make that game.
All right, right on.
Should be a zine in the future. A collaboration.
Let's do it. Right on. Fair enough.
But Yeah, I don't know. At any rate.
Okay, so Girl Underground.
Right, Girl Underground. So I ran that just this past weekend for you and Kurt, and it's kind of the same thing. I would like to have more than two of you there. I did learn some things running. It was my first time running it. I had just read through it, so we printed out the playbooks. I really think so. At the front, you kind of start with 8 morals that you pick that are kind of stereotypical. I guess, for lack of a better word, sexist morals that you're supposed to abide by.
I was just feeling a draft. I'm sorry.
Okay. And so you go through and break them and create your own beliefs over the top of those that are your way of thinking and acting. But I think for a game with just 2 player characters, that 8 is an awful lot.
Yeah.
So I think for our table anyway, I would trim that back. I wouldn't go too far though, because you do 1 out the gate. So I think 6 might be a good number to go with.
I think 4, 5, and 6 is you're right. Somewhere in that range.
And they kind of dictate how long the game is too, because you can't really you're supposed to overcome all of those before you find the exit out of this fairy tale universe.
Right.
If time constraint is a thing, I would think you would want to trim it back as well. But I would be interested to play it again because I would just like to see some of the other playbooks in action. And I learned too, we were kind of putting an equal focus on all of the playbooks and the girl, but really I think as a GM, the spotlight should be on the girl, and then it should be up to the people who are currently playing other characters to interject when it's appropriate.
Right. Well, they're there to sort of highlight the girl. So that's because all of their moves are centered around the girl.
And it's weird as a game master, right? Because you're so used to trying to share the spotlight. And in this game, it's on the players to share the spotlight because it's your option. It's called merry-go-round to pass the girl playbook off.
I had kind of a funny time with that game because I was incredibly tired when we were playing it. And then at the same time, I was trying to, play the game. Also, I was just exhausted. And then on top of that, I was sort of paying attention a lot to the way the mechanisms of the game work to see how or why they were the way they were. Does that make sense? And at some points I feel like because I was tired, I got lost because I do that with most games, right? But if I'm tired, I get kind of lost in a little bit, and I'm having trouble shifting between like the 2 brains. Do you know what I'm saying? Story brain and mechanics brain or whatever. And so I had fun. It was a good time. Some of those zine games are hard because they are so narrowly focused that so PBTA games by nature are really genre focused, right? But then when you have one that's condensed down to a zine, now we're really, really focused, right? So the game only really does one thing. And I don't say that as a criticism. It's just sort of that's what the game does. If you don't want to do that, then don't play this game, right? And so I don't know. I kind of go back and forth about a couple things because it's sort of like Bluebeard. Now the tone is obviously drastically different, right?
Right.
But if you're not in the mood, Bluebeard only does one thing. Right. And if you're not in the mood to do that thing, then that's not a good time. You know what I'm saying? So I think it's one of those kind of funny things because I was thinking about it and comparing it to Casket Land a little bit. Right. But I think Casket Land isn't as nearly as laser focused as this one is. This one only does one. You're only telling one story with this, whereas Casket Land is a little more flexible. It's in one specific world, but it's a little more wide open, So I had a good time, and I think it'd be fun to try it again. And I don't know. It's just I don't know what the right word is. Interesting because I felt like in one case with the ward is an ashcan game, and it does, you can tell this is not a finished thing, right? And there's some holes there. With this one, it's finished. It's a complete thing.
It felt very complete.
And it's even less than the ward, which was kind of weird,
I don't think it is.
You don't think so?
No, I mean, I would have to count out the pages, but if I were to lay bets, I would say that Girl Underground is probably like 2 pages longer.
Okay, fair enough. Either way, though, it seems like there's much.
But there's more playbooks, and there are included locations, which I thought were fantastic. Yeah. And it mentions some different story hooks for those, and the kind of adventure that you're having, where these different locations might be good, which I thought was great. I also liked that the individual playbooks came with a box at the bottom that gave you some considerations to use when playing that character.
Oh, yeah, like do
so
this,
like these are the things that your typical, if this happens, your character would do this, which I liked. So it doesn't tell you exactly what you have to do, but
I was playing the fawn. And mine said find danger in fun. I think is one of the ones that it may be phrased a little bit differently, but it was that's what it was. It was push the girl to do to try new things. It was always have fun, always make revelry basically. And the girl has those as well. Yes. The girls are like challenge your manners and that kind of stuff.
So I liked that.
Yeah, because it pushes you towards the direction of that story.
Well, and it makes it really easy to just pick up and roll with. So there's basically no thought in it from the player perspective to get it off the ground.
Yeah.
Like I know what my goals and motivations are, and that just makes the role playing so much easier. So when a hard choice comes along, I'm not stuck trying to figure it out. I can look down and be like, oh, okay, well, which one of these fits the situation? That's what I decide, and then move along with the story. However, there is, when it comes to the moves that are included, I was not 100% satisfied with those. So some of them kind of encapsulate things that I feel like could have just been a sidebar for the GM to incorporate. And I think it would have benefited from one additional move on the character sheet that actually did something mechanically. I missed that powered by the apocalypse, fail, or succeed with a consequence thing. And that was only present on a couple of things. And then the other two moves on them were the curiouser and curiouser thing, which doesn't have that. And the merry-go-round thing, which doesn't have that.
Right.
And so I felt like I didn't have as many opportunities for those hooks as I would like because there weren't as many dice rolls happening.
The other two moves essentially are go against your manners.
Right.
Or
for the girl,
or agree with the manners.
Yeah, stand strong in your convictions, or
I can't remember how it's phrased.
Go against the manners is the
right on.
So just mechanically I know that sounds so crazy too because I'm not a crunch person, but I just felt like it was just slightly lacking in that category. And for conflict resolution and randomizing purposes, like I wanted just maybe a little bit one more thing. Yeah.
So I guess one thing that bears to mention is that kind of gaming related, kind of not more inspiration. We finished Watchmen, which was a lot of fun. And
that's probably my favorite part about the whole series.
So if you haven't seen it, we're not going to spoil anything, but we were very, very pleased. I was a little disappointed initially with the Rorschach thing, but I'm not entirely upset with it either. So I'm kind of wishy-washy about it.
See, but I'm just like, I see what you're saying, but it's just like when we were talking to Alan and I said, I like the idea that somebody who wears a mask where you see what's really on the inner part of your soul is now being used. Yeah. As a tool to accomplish what you thought should have been interpreted. Like.
And it's one of those sacred cow things, I really just like Rorschach.
It's sort of ironic in a way that's delicious.
So, no, I agree. It's just, he's a sacred cow for me in a way. And, I'm all about, sacrifice those sacred cows. It's all good. But nonetheless, it's just, I don't know. I'm not upset about it. It's just, I don't know. I enjoyed it, but I wish they left room for Rorschach to do something else. Do you know what I'm saying? So that was fun. And we also started The Witcher. We're kind of like about a year behind in terms of streaming media, but
yeah, we're just starting. We watched one episode.
Yeah. So, but I enjoyed it. It was fun. And I really don't know a whole lot about the Witcher games. I've never played any of them.
I know nothing about it.
Yeah. So it's been fun and I enjoy it so far. So we'll see how that goes and whatever. But it's interesting to see fantasy tropes in larger media with good production values and stuff. Again, that isn't just Ice and Fire, because Song of Ice and Fire, while I love it, is sort of, it starts off very, very low fantasy. It could just, it's essentially just like the War of the Roses. It's really sort of mundane in a lot of ways, and then it grows and develops and whatever. I think it's really cool that there are other things sort of springboarding off of that hopefully have some legs to do some awesome stuff.
Well, it would be interesting to see something from video game culture translated to the screen that didn't suck.
That is also true. Yeah, I agree.
Not to put too fine of a point on it.
Well, something interesting to think about, though, is that video games make more than a lot of major movies.
But they translate into movies and TV shows poorly.
I don't disagree, but hang on and hear me out for a minute. I think part of the reason is that they know this Witcher TV show on Netflix isn't going to make the same kind of money that a Witcher game would. So if you have good content, where do you use that? To write the game or to make a TV show?
I see what you're saying, but is it possible that people that watch the show and really enjoyed it, but would be willing to play your video game that were not avid gamers to start with? And I feel like the answer to that is yes.
Yeah, I think so, possibly.
So if you're looking to expand your market to places that it hasn't been before, then crossing media in a way that is meaningful and interesting is definitely worth doing.
I agree. However, I just don't think that they're going to put the same amount of energy into those things that they would be into the actual game.
I agree. However, if you do a half-ass job, then you're not going to get that point. Like, you have to do it 100%.
But that's part of the reason why they have been the way they have been. So, and also, although all that said, there are lots of anime that are from video games and that kind of stuff. I don't know. I'm not the person to be judging that, but I think it's interesting because it's the first one that isn't
for Pokemon, of course.
that is like a live action thing or whatever, you know. So I'm hopeful. Like I said, we're one episode deep, but we'll see where it goes. So
first one.
Yeah, I had a good time. It was fun.
Speaking of video games, we've both been playing Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild.
A whole lot.
Gamer nerd related, although not in our usual vein. So yeah, like we're not one to sit down and play hours of video games. That's just not our jam. But Legend of Zelda, man. And it is so good. So I dabbled in Ocarina of Time for a while when it came out,
right?
Which has been some time ago,
right?
And it was pretty good. It had that kind of open platform feel, and it was all right. And then I forget what comes after because I'm not a huge Legend of Zelda person, but whatever it was, it lost me because we had it, and I was like, no. And I felt the same way about the original Legend of Zelda because we talked about that. The original Legend of Zelda, played all kinds of that game, beat the game, continued to play it after I beat it, and it was amazing. And then Link, and I was like, I'm done.
Right.
Done. And I played that game maybe once or twice and never looked at it again. And you were like, it wasn't a bad game. I was like, okay, maybe. But I was
changed the format of what Zelda was.
I was used to like gourmet food, and then you took me to a 3-star restaurant, and I was like, ooh.
Well, I think it's just such a drastic change in gameplay style. Is part of it that's just very jarring. So I don't disagree with you at all.
But I feel like Breath of the Wild does a good job of recapturing that really sandbox sort of environment. Is there an underlying storyline and some missions that you're given? Sure. Can you run off into the woods and do whatever you want until you feel like going to do that thing? Absolutely you can. And you can find all kinds of really cool and exciting things. Right. And there's lots of stuff to experiment with. And so I really, really love it.
Yeah. No, I agree. I haven't found a video game that keeps my attention for more than a week in a long, long time, and this one definitely has. I've been pretty consistently playing it when I have the chance or whatever, and I've done a fair amount of exploring, and I don't know, it's one of those interesting things because I heard and lots of people said that it was one of the best video games ever made, so that really kind of piqued my interest. Like, interesting. Is it really, or is this just smoke blowing and reminiscing about Zelda?
And I still don't know that I would have tried it if my friend hadn't bought it and I had watched her play it and I was like, oh no, that looks like fun.
I think I would have given it a try even if we hadn't seen her play it because it's Zelda. I'm going to give it a shot or whatever, But I really, like you said, I really enjoyed it. It's a good game. The gameplay is good. It's fun. It's refreshing. There's not a lot of stuff to get hung up on. And if you do get hung up on something, there's so much else to do that you just sort of leave it for a while and then come back later or whatever.
We had the Wii, and it was cool for a little while. And then we got the Xbox One, and I was so disappointed. Oh. And I am so glad that we have a Switch now.
Yeah.
The games are the Mario Maker game is cool.
Yeah.
To be able to make your own levels in something, that's just really neat. And I have always loved Mario. So there's that. And then between that and this Breath of the Wild game, like those things just by themselves make it worth it.
Right.
And Super Smash Brothers. Yeah. You can't not like that.
I agree.
Even people that only play Xbox also play Super Smash Brothers.
Right on. Well, do you have anything else or...
I have a few just minor mentions. I started reading Esoterrus. I haven't gotten very far into it. I've kind of started reading about there's kind of a preset sort of world that you can choose or you can make your own. But it definitely is pretty interesting.
Uses Gumshoe, right?
It does use the Gumshoe system. It's sort of, I guess, Esoterius is the original sort of imagining of the gumshoe system. Right. And then this is the second edition of that, of the original game. So they've added some things as the second edition. Right. So I've basically just read the short background. I can't even remember what the order is called of people. Like the Esoterius is the bad guys. And then you're part of this order of good people. It's like, I don't Latin. No, I did something Latin. Veritatis. Yes. Yeah. It has something to do with truth. It's like a truthiness Latin word.
Right.
Because like veracity, right? Like something that's proven and tested over and over again. So I'm going to be reading that over the next few weeks. I did Girl Underground first and then got that to the table. So now Esoterius is my next thing, hopefully.
Right on. Should look at Skullduggery too.
Yeah, that's there too. It was actually in the same pile with the Ward, and I picked the Ward up first because it's smaller. And I figured it would be easy for me to get to the table quickly. Yeah. Just because of background and knowledge being what it is. So
right on.
Yeah. And the only other thing I had was that my mom got me some Doctor Who's today.
So I saw those, and I thought it would be fun to do the Doctor Who Dread game like I did, but use those to build the story initially, to just roll them and be like, all right, cool, this is our Doctor Who scenario, and we're going to go. And then basically run it the exact same way as I did the Doctor Who game with the shot clock and the
They could be fun to do in the story too. Like if you don't, like nobody knows what the monster is. Something weird happens and then what does it show? Right. Or, if you're not sure what to do at some point, like you could roll the die for inspiration. I don't know. There's a lot of interesting ways that we could incorporate that in there. But yeah, that's definitely my first thought too. Like, okay, Dread Tower, Apocalypse World Shot Clock, Doctor Who Story Cube, and go.
Right. Oh yeah, I agree. I think it'd be wicked, easy fun.
I do have a minor problem because I have not watched the entire Every Doctor's series of Doctor Who forever. I'm pretty much just an excellent girl. I've dabbled in Matt Smith. But that's it. So all of the creatures that aren't from those, I don't know them.
No, I agree.
And some of those are incorporated in the cubes.
Yeah. But a quick jaunt down Wikipedia would probably do it for you.
Absolutely. It wouldn't be that hard to find out. Doctor Who has tons of fan pages that would be happy to fill me in.
I'm just not the biggest Matt Smith fan. I don't know why. He kind of reminds me of Crispin Glover a little bit.
But I'm not placing it.
He's the movie with the 3 orphan kids that go to the house of the actor. It's a book. Yes, he's the bad guy in Lemony Snicket.
That's Jim Carrey.
Not that one, the actual movie.
That's Jim Carrey. He's the one in the movie.
No, Jim Carrey's the one in the TV show.
He plays Count. It's Patrick Harris in the TV
you're right.
show.
Okay, then what am I thinking of?
I have no idea.
Either way, whatever. So he's creepy though, but I don't know. He just always reminded me of Crispin Glover. So it's like, I don't know.
I literally have no idea what you're talking about right now.
Okay.
Oh, he's from Charlie's Angels. And he's also Mr. World in the American Gods series. Yep. And he's also McFly.
Yes. That's before he went creepy, though.
I mean, he was a little creepy
he's just,
in there, too.
Because he's super young. But yeah,
he's like awkward creepy. So, he's a peeping Tom.
True. Hey, that movie was filmed in the 80s. It was a different time.
He's in Hot Tub Time Machine.
I don't know.
He's the Knave of Hearts in Alice in Sorry, I digress. Anyways.
I didn't know he was in Alice in Wonderland, yeah. So, yeah, I don't know. I just was never a big Matt Smith fan.
Yeah. Okay.
I think that's why. I realized that just now as we were talking. So.
Interesting.
Yeah, I don't know if that's the reason, but I just don't care for Matt Smith. I like Crispin Glover. I don't know. Maybe I just can't see him as Doctor Who. So either way. So I guess I've got one thing to mention real quick, because we have played a couple sessions of Invisible Sun, and it has been fun. It's been a good time. Sort of weird, surreal kind of strangeness. I can't decide about it though. Like the world I like a lot, but the way the game itself works, I'm still up in the air about. It's been a good time, but I don't know.
It's difficult to learn.
Yeah.
It is not intuitive.
Yeah, there's a lot of moving pieces. And then if you have different kinds of ants, it's even harder, because then you have several different rules at play in the game.
And like seeing the GM kind of struggle through finding the right book for things and trying to remember all the rules. Like it looks hard from that perspective. And from my character perspective, like I still don't understand which dice I'm supposed to use for what. Right. And I'm just constantly looking at the GM like, okay, this is what I want to do. what do I do now?
Right. Yeah. Well, and that's part of my thing with it is that I think it is a really, really cool product. And there's a lot of awesome creative energy
when
that's
it
put into
comes to
it.
theme, like,
Right.
blows it out of the water.
And part of me is that I have a fair amount of faith in Monty Cook for his designs, right? Because he's done a lot of cool stuff. And I think that it's sort of, I'm not a play it as written kind of person, right? Generally speaking, but I like to give games a chance.
I would like to be able to read all that is written before I start adapting things at least.
But at the same time, I also think that the first 2 times you play a game, I kind of am a play it as written person initially because I want to get the feel for what you were trying to do with this game. And then once I have a good feel for what you were going for in the game, then I can adapt it to my table, making decisions that I know why I want to change this, right? But there are so many moving pieces and different cards and all this kind of stuff. I just can't fathom. I'm really kind of glad that I didn't tackle it because I wanted to, but I just was kind of overwhelmed by it all and had other things happening, so it just didn't come together. And I'm just like, oh my God, there's so many moving pieces to this. It's kind of overwhelming. All that said, I've had a great time with the game.
It's beautiful.
But yeah, the game, and there's a lot of really good artwork and all kinds of cool stuff.
I like the tarot card, trying to figure out what happens mechanic is interesting.
Well, I've always found the tarot card thing incredibly intriguing. I like cards in games anyway. But
there's this awesome like soothsayer hand, but I still don't know mechanically what I'm supposed to do with that. I can't even figure out how to determine what color the card is in order to know what color I'm supposed to be looking for. And I don't know which ones matter to me. I don't.
It's so much, and I think it's so much at once. It's sort of like how
I love the story, the setting, and the theme.
Yeah.
I don't love the mechanics.
Right. Well, I sort of feel like this is gonna be kind of a weird comparison, but Pandemic Legacy we also just finished, right? And I gotta say,
God, we didn't talk about that at all.
Conquered that game.
So good.
It's like it was nobody's business, and we suck at Pandemic too. So
if you were to pull out that game right now and we were in the middle of it, they would be like, "Do you want to play an RPG or do you want to play Pandemic Legacy?" And I'd be like, "I want to play Pandemic Legacy."
Oh, not me. I'm good. We played it. I'm good.
Well, not now. Yeah, not now. But I'm saying, like, if we weren't finished yet, I would choose that.
So something I realized with the Legacy games, as you play, they add a ton of rules, right?
Yeah.
So as you go, when you start, the game is pretty simple. But as you get done, you have all these tons of rules you've added a game at a time.
Nobody has made a Legacy RPG yet.
But I feel like that's what happens that's what happens. I feel like that is what has happened with Invisible Sun. Basically, it's like you're trying to start off the Legacy game with all of the stuff on the board instead of saying, here's the beginning of it and we're going to add a little bit at a time. And I don't know that you can do it that way, but that's sort of it. Just there's so much there. So I don't know. It's been fun though. I really like it and enjoy it.
You made Zers, and you only incorporate in the first adventure, and then in the second you incorporate more, and then
I agree.
And then by the time you were done running campaign number 1, you would have experienced all the rules that you needed to know, and then you could do that.
True.
Boom! I just made you.
There you go. Done. All right.
And that's kind of how you run the games when you're a GM, right?
Yeah.
If no one ever played the game before, you don't start them off with like
all in.
Here's all the things you need to know.
Right. Well, do you have anything else, or are we going to close this one off here?
No, that's all my.
Right on. So my belly's making noise for some reason, but. So you may have heard our schedules have changed a little bit, and we have a whole lot more free weekends now than we did in the past, at least free weekends together anyway. So looking forward to having a lot more games at our tables. We've done a bunch of gaming just since the beginning of this year, and it's been a lot of fun. So looking forward to some more great gaming table episodes as we kind of just break games down that we've played recently and see where things go for us and our table in the future. And if you guys have any awesome games that you guys have had at your table, feel free to drop us a line and let us know, because I'm always looking for awesome games to play and try out, whether that's RPGs or board games, or even, I guess, the occasional Switch game, maybe. But let us know what you guys are playing and what you have on your table, because I'd be curious to see, and maybe find some games and some recommendations for us to take for a spin at our table. As you know, remember the Gonna Geek Network, and you can find all kinds of awesome You can find all kinds of awesome geeky podcasts over at GonnaGeekNetwork.com. And a big shout out and thank you to all of our Patreon supporters for supporting us there. So if you like what we do here at Just One More Fix, you can head over to patreon.com/JustOneMoreFix and support us over there and get access to all of our raw audio feeds and pre-shows, as well as our zine in print or PDF format, depending on what level you support at. And a big thank you, as always, to all of our Patreon supporters like Alistair H., Timothy Barra, Hector Treelane, Tiziano Furlano, Simon McNair, Alan White, and the OG Todd Olson. I think that'll do it for us this week, and we will see you all next week. Thanks for listening. This has been an episode of Just One More Fix. Music has been provided by Kevin MacLeod. You can find him at incompetech.com. You can support us at patreon.com/JustOneMoreFix or follow us on Twitter at JustOneMoreFix.